Hello everyone and welcome to Let's Talk About EX. I'm your host Ryan McGrory, and today we have a truly inspiring guest, Allan Sparkes, one of Australia's most highly decorated citizens. Now, Allan's heroism transcends his bravery decorations as he pivots his remarkable experiences into advocating for mental health. Having faced profound challenges himself, Allan now helps others understand the importance of mental well-being, especially in high-stress professions. Now today we're going to uncover what drives his advocacy and explore his insights on creating healthier workplace environments. So buckle up as we dive into a conversation that's all about turning adversity into a platform for change. Allan, how are you?
Yeah, I'm really well, Ryan. So good to see you again. And thank you very
Likewise.
much for the invitation to participate.
No, an absolute pleasure. Really appreciate you can spend the time with us today. I heard you talk a couple of times at a conference the other month, and I was desperate to get in touch with you afterwards because it wasn't just me in the room. The whole room loved what you were saying. I could tell it. It was a great energy, and I wanted to capture some of that today and ask
Oh, thank you.
a lot of questions your way about the great work that you're doing.
Thank you very much, mate. It's good to see you again, and I appreciate the fact that the conference was a great place for a lot of good people to meet up and keep in contact.
Yeah, excellent. I agree. Allan, you've received some of Australia's highest honours for bravery and now dedicate yourself to mental health advocacy. Could you share a little bit about what motivated this transition and how your experiences have shared or shaped your approach to mental health?
I think that when I came back to Sydney in 2012, I started to become involved in some organisations, including Beyond Blue and the New South Wales Police Mental Health Intervention Team. And that was my sort of first foray into something different to my own lived experience of mental ill health. And I really liked the idea that awareness was being raised about the fact that people are mentally unwell and the need for service to be provided and help to be provided. And for many years, I sort of was very supportive of that concept that we need to reduce stigma and raise awareness. And I guess because it was such a transition from having a lived experience of two mental illnesses many years ago to now being involved in a different space where I thought, I'm doing something with my lived experience. I'm doing something positive, and I believed it was helping people. And then I wrote a book which was published by Penguin, and that really helped me understand in many ways what many other people are going through, particularly first responders. And I think for a lot of first responders, it helped them understand that they weren't alone, that there are other people who had been through similar things. But it wasn't until I went to the Mental Health Commission as a Deputy Commissioner some years later that I was able to unpack the why. I could accept my diagnosis, but I wanted to know why, as an operational cop, that I was impacted so adversely by these particularly significantly traumatic events. And working with one of the other Deputy Commissioners, Dr. Martin Cohen, who's an eminent psychiatrist, he helped me unpack and understand the why factor. And that's when I realised, oh my God, all of these factors that contributed to me being so unwell, they're across all sectors of our society, and particularly first responders. And essentially what we unpacked with Dr. Cohen and also my colleague Dr. David said is that when people become chronically stressed or burnt out, they're really vulnerable to the development of other mental issues, particularly mental illnesses. So if we can prevent people being chronically stressed or burnt out, are we not in a better place to prevent a lot of mental ill health across Australia? And that was sort of what we came to agreement. Well, yeah, that's what we should be focusing on. So then I went into really focusing on helping people understand why they become chronically stressed in an effort to reduce their overall mental ill health. And that's what I've been focusing on for the last probably 8 years or so, is that change in the mindset from a postvention to a prevention.
You mentioned prevention a lot there. That seems to be a theme in the work that you do. And I think I've noticed, as most of us have socially in the last 20 or so years, that awareness has increased, tenfold in terms of what mental health is, or just it used in the kind of common vernacular as a work, and the terminology associated with it. Do you think there's enough done in the prevention stage at the moment?
No, I don't, and I think that's been a big failure of the mental health sector as a whole. In my opinion, I believe that the majority of funding has been, over the years, has been based on a post-vention model. This perception that helping people when they become mentally unwell, and we know that billions of dollars have been spent on that. And the latest report from the National Mental Health Commission of Australia shows that statistically the mental health of Australians hasn't really improved in the past 10 years. And that's a serious concern for me, that billions of dollars have been spent and we aren't seeing any positive change. And there's still this, to a majority that I see of social media posts, such as LinkedIn posts and things, and other forms of media, there's still this, speak up, get help, as though that it's the easiest thing in the world to do, and there's plenty of help available. It's all easily accessible. It's all affordable, and that's not the reality, Ryan. And I just wish that we could start dealing with reality, not the misconception that is actually out there.
Totally. And from your perspective as a mental wellness advocate, or as someone who actually works a lot in workplaces, what do you think the current state of workplace well-being is in Australia, and where do you see the most significant needs or gaps?
Look, I'm actually really, really concerned about it. I mean, statistically, Australia has 61% of its workforce in a state of chronic stress or burnout, compared to the rest of the world at 48%. And I ask this question regularly: why are Aussies so chronically stressed? Why are we so burnt out? And there's a myriad of answers that come to that. Yeah. I think that there's a lot of insecurity in our world, particularly in Australia. There's a lot of worry, concern about the cost of living and all those things. But I think the insecurity in the workplace, people just don't feel as though their jobs are secure unless they're in a form of employment where almost their career paths have a degree of longevity and a degree of certainty. I look at a lot of our younger Australians who are coming into the workforce after spending years and a lot of money or going into a lot of HECS debt to get a degree, who can't actually get a job relative to their degrees. They're forced to then go back and do other degrees to try and get a job. They can't even get a volunteer position because there's so much competition for volunteer roles. I think a lot of this stuff, no one wants to acknowledge it, no one wants to know about it, no one wants to do anything about it. And unless we change the way we do business, I think we are going to see those rates of chronic stress and associated mental ill health factors not decrease, they will certainly increase. And that can have catastrophic effects on the individual, the organisation, and their families. It's a very, very concerning matter.
It's something where I think the trend is not our friend in the last decade or so. A lot of those statistics you're mentioning, it's like the news story that doesn't go away, particularly related to burnout. I think there's part of that's for good reason it doesn't go away, and hopefully it can stay on the agenda until we give a lot of focus to the preventative. But speaking of which, I heard you speak about an amazing programme that you built, a mental health training programme for the Bondi Beach Surf Lifesavers. So it was a bit of a specially designed first responder programme. Can you share a little bit about it? Because I'm going to bastardise it if I talk longer about it.
I was approached to develop a training program for the Waverley Council Lifeguards, which obviously the guys work at Bondi Beach in Tamarama, and I had done a couple of pro bono presentations for them when I was an ambassador for Beyond Blue and the like, and I went to my colleague, Dr. David Said, who's an eminent psychologist and had a lot of experience preparing training programs, and we went to the council and we sat down with some of the lifeguards. And we wanted to know what they wanted out of the training. We wanted to know what were the problems that they encountered in the workplace. and we wanted to tailor a package for them that related to their needs. And it wasn't going to be just a one-off, here's some guidelines, all the best. I think the difference was we were insistent that this needed to be a phase program, acknowledging that you just can't change workplaces overnight or by one presentation. You can start to make inroads, but you can't probably make the achievements that you're hoping to have.
Yeah.
So that was agreed to, and what we started was doing this phase program of identifying the challenges that they face in the workplace and how do we counter those challenges, both not so much physically because the guys are super fit, they're essentially elite athletes, but psychologically, how do we change that? And these men and women, they work in potentially very traumatic environments, a lot of stressors they experience, but by collaboration with them, we're able to target and focus, and hopefully our aim was to help them overcome these challenges in a preventative phase, but also by backing that up with Dave's clinical expertise as and when needed. And we started this back in 2019, and as you saw from Bruce Hopkins when he spoke at the conference, it has made a massive difference to the psychological health of these employees, and that's had a flow-on effect for their professional roles and also their personal lives. Overall, the benefits have been significant, and each year we do the training, we increase the level of knowledge that they get, their skill levels, just to help educate, enhance, but give them the opportunity to do this stuff themselves. So we're not there holding their hand, we give them the skills and then they get a chance to go out and practice it, develop it, and integrate it into their workplace. And I'd suggest that as you saw, Ryan, at the conference, it has made a huge difference and a very positive difference, which for us is we're achieving our goals and helping these people achieve their goals to become better at their job with less impact on their psychological health.
It was a fantastic story and a great case study, and yeah, definitely heard from the horse's mouth, Hoppo, talking there about the benefits that he'd seen, but also the measurements you've taken there as well. What do you think makes what makes tailor-made mental health initiatives more effective compared to the more generic programs that you see?
One of the things I see is that the men and women we engage with, and also we do this training now with other councils, so it's not just lifeguards acting as first responders, so to speak. Yeah. It's working with employees who are in positions where there could be a lot of conflict in the workplace or confrontation, and the same principles apply. It's the impact of the stress on them psychologically and physically. But I think that when we start to develop the training program, the employees have a sense that, you know what, our employer actually cares about us. They're not just throwing something at us. They actually care about us. They want to hear the bad crap that's going on in our workplace. They want to acknowledge it. They want to understand it. But more importantly, they want to actually do something about it. So I think the employee feels a real sense that they're cared for, they're respected, and they're valued, which is critically important going forward. Yeah. And then we go in and we show that we actually care about them, acknowledge them, and respect what they go through. And we're there to try and help them, not just, here it is, see you later. It's like, yep, this is where we're starting from, and hopefully next year we're going to come back and we're going to keep going and doing it until things improve for you individually and collectively as a team within your workplace.
And you design training for all different sorts of environments. You've got corporate offices, you've got lifeguard stations, you've got other first responder settings. What are some of the challenges you face when implementing these initiatives in those diverse settings?
I think the biggest one, Ryan, would be as soon as you mention mental health or mental ill health, people can switch off very, very quickly. They may be suffering from some form of mental ill health themselves, and they are frightened of acknowledging that or disclosing it, or the employer becoming aware of it. There's these factors to consider. But I think it's the unknown. They don't really know what the training's going to be all about. They hope it's going to help, but they don't really know until we actually start the training. And I think what is unique with what we do is the combination of my own lived experience, the knowledge I've gained working in the sector, but Dave's clinical expertise, his scientific knowledge, the combination of those two has proven to be a really significant benefit for people to go, these guys actually, they get it, they know it, they understand it, he's lived it, he knows exactly what it's like. So it adds credibility to our program and the content and integrity, and it builds trust. And that, as you realise, is critically important for any form of training, that trust is built. And the same applies to the training I do for the New South Wales Police. It's the fact that I have lived it, I've experienced, I've been an operational cop, I've done the hard yards, I got smashed, but I help them understand why I got smashed, which helps them understand why their mental health may be declining or has declined. And that again is very, very important.
What advice would you give to HR leaders or leaders within a workplace, or any practitioner who wants to start or improve mental health initiatives within their organisations, given your experience on kind of all sides as someone who's been working within an organisation and as someone who comes into organisations now? What advice would you give, or what wisdom could you share to help people improve these initiatives? Because for a long while, and I think you alluded to it earlier, as many of them have been perhaps tokenistic. A mental health initiative will come along, you've got to listen to this, people switch off and then they walk out the door and kind of life continues and nothing changes, or very little. What advice could you share that might help someone in those kind of organising roles?
Yeah, I look to the HR managers and the senior executives that we've engaged with, and the courage that they've shown to go, and you know what we've tried in the past hasn't helped as much as we had wanted to. Not to say it hasn't helped at all.
Yeah.
It hasn't helped to the level that we want it to do. So let's try something different. Let's do something different. And I respect their courage, and I respect the fact that they obviously care about their people. So my advice would be is go to your people and sit down with them and identify what the challenges are, what they're experiencing that is causing them to feel mentally unwell or feel as though they are chronically stressed or on the way to it. Identify these factors and say, okay, how can we address these factors? What can we do? We know that some organisations, they automatically flick people away to places where they believe that help is going to be provided to them. That may be the case that they do get some help that's required and it solves a problem. But from my experience, I've spoken to a lot of people who go, you know what, I was sent somewhere and it just didn't help for a whole raft of reasons. And I think it was, again, getting back to this post-vention model, just speak up, get help, and all will be good. Well, I don't believe it works that way. Yeah. We need to very, very clearly identify problems, identify challenges, and work very hard to overcome them. But again, it gets back to my point regarding the reasons why Australians are so burnt out. I think that insecurity is a major issue, and that there's no security in the workplace in many organisations, that your career or your employment status can be decimated at any point in time. So this feeling of like I've got to work really, really hard to prove I'm okay, to prove my value to the organisations, to keep my job. And I think this is where people push themselves past their limitations, and that's where the problems can really start. And we know that once people get to that state, essentially the organisation will divert them away from the organisation and not keep them there and include them and help them to get better.
And you mentioned one of the key points there was actually speaking to people, that whole consultation process, which often gets missed, and often with the best intentions. You get people that have a high care factor that want to improve the workplace situation or whatever it is, but they skip that step. Why do you think that happens so often?
A very hard question to answer, Ryan. I mean, we all have our limitations of how much we can actually care for another person or other people. For many people, it's bloody hard to just care for yourself. and you don't have the capacity to care for others. And I think that's the reality, and let's be realistic. So how can we do that? Do we employ people that have this great capacity to not only to care, but to make the changes that need to be done? And is that possible? Yeah, of course it's possible. I've seen it. For the councils and organisations that I work with, I see those people. They are out there, but it's also we never reward the people who do the right thing as far as taking care of themselves physically and psychologically on a proactive basis.
Yeah.
We just, in many, as you know, sometimes we overload them with work because they have this great capacity to keep going.
There's your reward.
And and it's like, they're the workhorses. They'll be right. They'll keep carrying on.
Yeah.
So I think it's important that we have these hard conversations with ourselves. And as senior executives and managers and HR managers, we have these hard conversations, and we go, you know what? Let's change the tack. Let's really make a difference here. Yeah. And I think that this new legislation to create psychologically safe workplaces, there's now a legal requirement for workplaces to start working on this principle. Hopefully, that will make some significant changes, but the reality is it's not going to happen quickly, but the potential for it to make massive improvements is fantastic.
And those tough conversations, I mean, they are curly ones, and I'm not sure everyone has the skill to have them, or to have the confidence in order to have them. I know when someone's running at full pelt for a long time, then logic or common sense will say that there's a time they won't be able to do it. And you see in sport that a good coach will take a player off, when they're at that level where they're looking tired, and the player's rarely happy about that decision. So it is a difficult thing to do, but we don't seem to do that in workplaces, where there's someone needs a timeout, someone realizes it, and then action happens. We just kind of let it go on. It seems. Do you think that's I don't believe it's a lack of goodwill. I think it's a lack of skill. What do you think?
Yeah, look, using the sporting model, Ryan, and I look at the physical aspects of the lifeguards, for example, we train.
Yeah.
Their physical health is at elite level.
Yeah.
And they're at that elite level because they need to be. They need to be physically fit to do their job. So they are very proactive about their physical health.
Yeah.
And why can't we apply the same model from a psychological sense? And this is what the training is about, is to help them become psychologically capable to the level they are required for their profession. So why can't we develop this preventative psychological model to help educate and train people how to be psychologically well? So we call our training operational readiness. The requirement to be physically and psychologically ready to do your job. And that's a great combination, because as we know, in most instances you need to be mentally well to be physically well and vice versa. So there just seems to have been this, physically they might be okay, but mentally they're not great. And as soon as that's identified, it's like, okay, what do we do now? I don't know, but we'll send them there. They'll fix the problem for me.
Yeah.
And if they don't come back, that's not my problem. I've done what I've required to do, but there's been no, the most important thing for our organisations is our people, keeping them well. How do we do that? Whereas I think the big mistake's been, if they're not well, move them somewhere else.
On
and it's not my problem.
Yeah. There's been a fair trend in that, I think in the last 20 or so years. But maybe looking forward, actually, what trends or innovations do you see shaping the future of mental health or mental health advocacy, especially in the workplace?
I think that the new legislation has the potential to make significant changes, and that, I believe, has the potential to improve the mental health of Australians across the country. But there's a lot of aspects to the workplace which I think are significantly contributing factors, as we've spoken about before, the insecurity, the contractual work terms, all of these things are creating significant problems for people's psychological health in many ways, particularly for the younger people entering the workplace. And I also think we need to look back further, Ryan, to people of a very, very young age. What my experience has been is that we are seeing young people who are entering the workplace who are already chronically stressed or mentally unwell, not in a position to cope with the stresses of their employment, not in a position to cope with the stress of not actually able to get a job. So we need to wind it way back as to the start of a young person's life, even as young as preschool. What are the stresses that are being placed upon these people when they enter the education system? And are those stresses contributing to their declining mental health as they get through their children's years, their adolescent years, heading into the workplace? That's a massive area where I think we can make huge changes in the long term, because what I see is we're getting young people who are actually chronically stressed in high school, university, entering the workplace. They're already mentally unwell, and we need to start changing that at the highest levels of government and those in a position to address those issues where they're developing.
Yeah, that's not a trend we can allow to continue and be talking about in another 20 years.
No, we can't.
Finally, is there any messages you would like to leave our listeners with about the importance of addressing mental health proactively in either personal or professional contexts?
I think it's understanding why our lifestyle can impact us so significantly, and that just even a basic thing such as sleep, Ryan, people sadly are not getting the quality sleep they need, and it breaks my heart in many ways that there's so much knowledge and information and so many organisations such as the Sleep Foundation who are trying to help people understand you must have good quality sleep. And people are still not placing the emphasis on the need for quality sleep, and they're just not getting it. And if we could just help people get the quality of sleep they need, I think we'd reduce mental ill health across the country quite rapidly. But just things like understanding, you're told you need good sleep, but understand why you need good sleep. You're told you need to exercise, but you've got to understand why the brain needs exercise, why exercise is so important for our mental health, and why we need good food, not only for great body's health, but also for our brain health. So there's a lot of information about you need to do this, you need to do that, blah, 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 but there's not the backup of why you need to do it. And I'm really proud that what we endeavour to do is help people understand the why you need to do this, why it has a positive impact in your life, or why it can have a negative impact in your life. And from my own experience, once I understand the why, I was like, oh wow, light bulb moment. Yeah. And it changed my life. Literally changed my life.
We need a slip, slop, slap for sleep. Yeah.
Yeah, we do. Absolutely. Yeah. And I see that with our young, they're not getting the sleep that they need, and it's having such a devastating impact on their psychological health and their physical health. It is very, very concerning. And we talk about the government talks about social media and things. I think acknowledge that, but let's look at the reality. By being on your devices or whatever is actually reducing your sleep time. It's reducing your sleep quality. That's the outcome which needs to be addressed.
Oh, big time. One of the best things we've done in this house in the last 5 years is get phones out of the bedroom.
And they need to stay out. Yeah,
definitely. I notice it. Yeah, big time. Allan, thanks very much for spending time with us. Thanks for being so generous with not only your stories but your insights. And there was a few tips along the way, particularly that our listeners will find very helpful. Appreciate your time. It's been an absolute honour talking to you.
Thanks,
all
Ryan.
the best.
Yeah, it's been great to catch up with you, mate, and I hope we continue to do so. Thank you very much.
Likewise, thank you. Thank you, Allan, for sharing your profound insights and your stories with us today. A journey from bravery bravery under the most challenging circumstances to advocating for mental health is truly inspiring. To our listeners, we hope today's episode leaves you with a deeper understanding of the importance of proactive mental health strategies, both personally and professionally and around your workplace. And don't forget to visit Allan's website to learn more about his work and check out his book, The Cost of Bravery. Join us next time on Let's Talk About EX as we continue to explore powerful stories that are shaping workplace experiences. Until then, keep striving to make your workplace a healthier and a more supportive environment. Thanks.